Today I'm going to test and review the Limitless limiter from DMG Audio. Why? Because the limiter you're using represents the final say over the quality of your masters, and I want to find the best limiter. If this is your first time here and you want to learn audio production, mixing or mastering, start by clicking the subscribe and bell button. A couple of months ago I started a personal quest of finding the best limiter that exists on the audio market. For testing Limitless, I'm going to use as a point of reference TC Electronics Birckwall limiter from PowerCore, which I believe is one of the best limiters. I will also test Limitless against Pro-L2 from FabFilter. But first, if you want to improve your mixes and masters in less than 10 minutes, go ahead and download your cheat sheet. While you do that, I'll play some glorious intro. At first glance, Limitless from DMG Audio looks pretty simple. On the left, we've got standard parameters like threshold, with which you can control how much of the audio material you want to limit. Keep in mind that threshold in this case also acts as a gain parameter, so the more threshold you apply, the more gain you'll have. In the last couple of episodes I tested different limiters and I found out that for some reason companies like to name the same parameter differently. In the case of the threshold, some companies like to name this exact parameter gain, like it is the case of Pro-L2 from FabFilter. Anyway, you should be aware of this because sometimes this could create some confusion. Cool, now let's move on. Here we have the ceiling with which you can control the output of the limiter. With the ceiling parameter, you basically set up the level at which the limiter should limit the peaks or true peaks. Next, we have the release parameter, with which you control the limiter's release. Then, if you click here, you can choose between 6 styles: aggressive, punchy, warm, smooth, tight, and transparent. In the manual mode, you can customize some more settings, about which we're going to discuss a little bit later. Now, an interesting thing about the Limitless is that usually limiters act as a one wide band limiter. This is the first time I ever saw a limiter to affect audio material on a multi-band level, meaning Limitless offers the possibility to adjust the center frequency of 6 different bands, but if you want, you can deactivate some bands. So, the cool part is that with this limiter you can affect up to 6 bands in different ways. That makes me think of a multi-band compressor or a dynamic EQ, and this gives you more customizing power. If you hover over one of these dots, you can adjust the center frequency and the band's gain, almost like an EQ. So, in case you will need to make some final balance adjustments, you can do it by adjusting these bands. Next, on the top, here is the high-pass filter, in case you want to take some of the unwanted low frequencies. You can customize the frequency of the filter in the setup option, which I'll show you in just a minute. Then when you activate the ISP option, which stands for intersample peak, we're informed here that limiters will act on true peak values for limiting. Also, if you want, you can start using Limitless by browsing different presets here. Then here, you can choose different graphs. The default frequency graph, time if you want to see the peaks, and history, which will show you the loudness history of your track. Then here you can see how much gain reduction is applied by Limitless. And here you have some loudness information related to your track. If you need fresh data, be sure to click this refresh button here. So this is the easy mode of Limitless. But this limiter has to offer more customization and control in case you need it. So if you click here, there are some parameters that you can customize, like the input trim, with which you can control the input of the limiter in case your audio material is too hot. Then you can set up the slope of the bands of Limitless here. Then with the separation parameter, you can control the degree of band independence. And we're informed that higher values can affect the balance of your mix in terms of equalization. Then if you set the stereo link between the channels at 100%, it will preserve the stereo image. Then on the right, there's the clipping section, where you can choose between adding some third-order harmonics by choosing between the swell modes, or for some analog-like clipping, you can choose between the knee modes. When you select a clipping mode, the clipper parameters become active for you to customize, and it seems that you can even oversample the clipper in case you need it. Then here is the dither section, where you can choose between a 24-bit or a 16-bit dither. Then here you can control the noise shaping of the dither. Now, if you want even more things to customize, go to Setup. Here, for example, you can customize the frequency of the high-pass filter and its slope. Then here, you can customize the transient separation, some true peak algorithm, plus some high-quality mode for clipper oversampling. So yeah, there are tons of things you can customize here, which I will not go over in this video. But one thing I like to see is the bands of the Limitless. With these bands, you can select their center frequency. You can mute or solo them, or you can even deactivate them by double-clicking on these dots. Then you can modify the gain of different bands here on the graph, or here. Then, if you choose a style, let's say transparent, and you want some more customization, you can click on these two arrows here. Once you do that, you enter the manual mode, where you just copy the settings of the previous style, in our case the transparent style, and now you can modify different parameters even further, depending on your needs. You can see that different styles have different parameters that you can customize if you copy them into the manual mode. And there you have it. This is the overview of the Limitless limiter. And now let's see and hear how this limiter sounds. For this test, I'll use a song produced and mixed by my brother Vlad. I already used this song in other limiters tests, and this makes it easier for me to depict if a limiter sounds good or not. Plus, I have as a reference the Birckwall limiter, the PowerCore version from TC Electronic, which in my opinion is one of the best sounding limiters. To give you some context, I matched the limiters in terms of loudness as much as I could. I also set a ceiling of -1 dB as I usually do in my mastering sessions, and I set a release of about 49 milliseconds. Then I took out just a tiny bit of the top end as I felt that Limitless was making the master a little bit too bright. I also added just a tiny bit of clipping and some oversampling for the clipping section. In general, when I use a limiter, I expect it to limit my mixes or masters in the most transparent way possible. So hopefully, Limitless will do that. Let's listen. From the very beginning, I must say that I like that Limitless is transparent and keeps the separation between the elements of the mix. And limiters usually do that in softer parts of mixes, but let's actually put Limitless to work. I must say I'm impressed. Usually in this section and at this level, other limiters distort and cloud the mix. However, Limitless, as the Birckwall limiter from TC Electronic, keeps the mix in its place. While it is a crowded part, Limitless keeps the vocals clear, making them maybe a tiny bit brighter than the Birckwall limiter. Limitless also keeps the stereo image and depth almost untouched. Let's move to another section. So it seems that Limitless version is still a bit brighter, but the cool part is that the top end is not harsh. The low end is kept tight and punchy, the mids are clear, no distortion. I like it so far. But let's see how Limitless compares to Pro-L2 from FabFilter in this section. Now, it is really hard to tell the difference. Maybe the Limitless version is just a bit brighter, but overall I like how Limitless is working. Now, from my multiple limiters tests, I found out that some of the limiters affect softer parts of mixes in unwanted ways, making them louder than they should. So let's see how Limitless behaves in this scenario. The loudest part in this section reaches about -13.8 LUFS in the case of the Birckwall, and Limitless achieves about -13.6 LUFS, which is really close to the result I wanted. This confirms for me that the softer parts of my mixes, if I would choose Limitless for my mastering sessions, would be treated accordingly. And now it's time to see how Limitless handles true peaks. If you want to take care of true peaks, you need to activate this ISP or intersample peaks option here. There's also an option here in the advanced DSP setup. Now, if I refresh the meters here and I play the master, it says here that we have about -1 dB true peak. But from my previous limiters tests, I know that some of these readings are not accurate. That's why I'm using this meter from TC Electronic, which tells me that true peaks actually reach about -0.7 dB true peak, not -1. And this is also the case with Pro-L2 from FabFilter, because even if I set up the ceiling to -1 dB true peak, the true peak levels still reach -0.8 dB true peak. However, this is not the case when I set the ceiling, which is called threshold in the case of the Birckwall limiter, to -1 dBFS. I told you different limiters use different names for the same parameter, didn't I? But anyway, if I set the ceiling to -1 dBFS on the Birckwall limiter, the true peaks don't go over the ceiling. So yeah, if you care about true peaks, try using additional meters and in case you need it, increase the ceiling. And we got to the conclusions part. Time flies fast when you have fun. This was another episode of testing a crucial tool that you need to use whenever you need louder masters, and that is a limiter. But this was only scratching the surface of audio mastering. In case you want to finally make your production sound professional, check out my Pro Audio Mastering program, where I'll teach you everything you need to know about audio mastering, and that is step by step. I'll leave the link in the description below. Now, if we get back to the purpose of this video, I will say this. I believe, in my honest opinion, that Limitless from DMG Audio is one of the best limiters that you can get your hands on at this moment. When testing, I felt almost the same as when I was testing Pro-L2 from FabFilter. But the downside was that it took me a bit longer to figure out Limitless than Pro-L2. So yeah, I believe Pro-L2 is more user-friendly as there are less parameters you can tweak. That being said, Limitless is a beast of a limiter, and if you want absolute control over your masters, you might want to try Limitless. In terms of how it sounds, Limitless keeps the stereo image, the 3D space and the separation of the elements of the mix almost untouched. In terms of the quality, I believe it is really close to the Birckwall limiter from TC Electronic and Pro-L2. Now, in case you use Limitless but you're not satisfied with its sound, try tweaking the parameters some more or change other things in your mastering chain, because Limitless, in my honest opinion, sounds very good. And yes, it might take some time to make it work as you want, as it is very easy to make things sound bad if you have no previous experience with limiters. And you, what do you think? Do you like or use Limitless? What other limiters do you recommend? Comment, like, share and of course subscribe, because by doing this you help me grow this channel, and by growing this channel I could help more audio producers. Also, check out other limiter reviews I made, you might find some interesting things there. Until next time, stay cool and make great music.